Welcome to the latest edition of Here's What We Know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. And first of all, thank you for our partners who help us bring this to you. But right now, this podcast came about because I'm such a fan of this man's work. And I sent him, it's hard to find out anything about him too, telling you. And I sent him an email going, I am such a fan. Would you be willing to be on my podcast? And it's one of those emails you get back and they say, yes. And you're like, I can't believe I'm reading this right now. He is the author of Brewster RockIt, Space Guy, possibly my favorite strip that is running today. It is one I build my world around each morning. This is Tim Rickard, or as he likes to say, we've now decided it's Tim Rickard because it sounds more like Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Tim, how are you?
I am doing great. How are you doing, Gary?
I'm telling you what, I've talked to so many people, right? I mean, the beautiful thing about what I do, I've talked to so many people from every walk of life. I've talked to NASA scientists. I've talked to country singers. I've talked to nationally famous comedians and actors and Olympic athletes and football players. I have never talked to someone who does what you do for a living. This is my first time.
Oh, what an honor.
No, for me, I am, like I said, it's such fun. And I just can't wait to delve into how you do what you do. It just, listen, I do a show every day, and it's one thing for me to just do the show, but to have, you and I understand the same concept. The never ending mall is what I call it, right? No matter what you do, whatever, where's the next one?
Exactly. Yeah. You're only as good as the next trip that's coming up. Everything else is, everything else is forgotten.
You know, usually I do a lot of research on people and I kind of know who they are when I go into it, but I'm telling you the truth, I can't find anything on you. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go into this just as it is and go, can I get a little of your backstory as much as you want to share with me? How did you get in it? How did this process, how did you get to where you are now?
I've always loved cartoons and cartooning. That's basically all I wanted to do. And ever since I was little, I was into dinosaurs and cartooning. Mostly when I was real young, I would draw on anything. I would draw. I remember my dad used to talk about when we'd go to a restaurant and they would have these big, windows. And it'd be like cold, and there'd be condensation on the windows, and he'd be standing there ordering at the and food at the restaurant, and he'd turn around, and I would have drawn this large mural in the condensation on the window behind him. I always loved to draw, and I love cartooning, so I always wanted to be a cartoonist. So especially a newspaper comic strip. That's what I always loved. Grew up reading Peanuts, and of course, as I got older, Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes and stuff. So I decided that's what I wanted to be. It took a while to break into it, but I finally made it.
I hear a little bit of accent. I am from L.A. We call that Lower Alabama, is where I originally hail from. Where's the accent from?
Kentucky by way of North Carolina.
Oh, you earned it.
Yeah.
Yeah, us people from Alabama, we listen to people from North Carolina and go, damn, y'all talk funny. So was it, and that's the way I think it is for most artists in your situation, that you have a compulsion to draw. Now I have talked to artists, right? And I just did this whole thing on like Monet, this guy who's a Monet expert. And it's almost like he didn't have a choice but to draw. It was just a compulsion that had to come out. Was that you? Every spare space, anything, any margin in a book was going to turn into a picture?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's all I did in class. I think I graduated high school with like a D average because I was always drawing my page. I'd be carrying around, a notebook just crammed full of sketches because I was drawing all the time, just constantly.
I love it. What were some of you mentioned it. I mean, I think it is such a dearth with the newspapers and the space and limits that I think one of the great joys of my life are comic strips from newspapers. I mean, it was, if I had to define something, because I was a comic book nerd. I loved Iron Man. I loved Spider-Man. I loved Thor. As a matter of fact, my son got me a Thor minifigure.
Oh, nice.
Right? So, I mean, I'm a comic book nerd from way back. But my favorite things were the newspaper strips.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved comic books too. As a matter of fact, I kind of wanted to be a comic book artist at first until I realized how much work was involved. And I thought, you have to draw, a couple pages worth of comics a day for a comic book and a newspaper strip. You only have to draw a few panels. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm lazy. I'll take the newspaper. Plus, I like to write and I liked humor, so I don't know. I just like that. I like the way some cartoonists could just take that little tiny, like you said, tiny little space in a newspaper and turn it into something. So some little story, some little thought, something that would resonate with people in such a tiny little small area.
How did you decide? And we're getting into Brewster RockIt, which I think is nothing more than inspired genius. But we'll get into. But first of all, you had to decide to whether to make it a just a daily thing, right? And I know that's the one by something like Family Circus or something that's never tied into what's going on. There's no storyline. It's just, okay, here it is today, or a storyline, and that's rarer today, right?
Yeah. Yeah, originally, when I first started out, I tried to pattern it after serial strips. The whole thing was to take like the old newspaper strips back in the 40s or so, like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, and kind of turn it on its head a little bit. But, kind of basically I was mimicking that type of serial strip. And I first started out, it was more like that. The storylines would go on for weeks, but then my syndicate was like, yeah, you might want to cut the short storylines down a little shorter. So I started making them more like 1 week arcs and 2 week arcs, and I've gotten shorter than that. I guess my attention span has gotten a lot shorter. My arcs tend to be 3 or 4 days anymore.
I tell you what, and not to give spoilers, but as we tape this, the current arc is on the Are You Serious, which is the space station, has been invaded by the numbers people. And it's hilarious.
Oh.
It's the amount of puns and the amount of quick, clever jokes that you pull in that is a beautiful marriage of the brightly colored numbers and then the dialogue that goes with it. That's the thing that's the hard part to me. Do you think of a dialogue and then comes the picture, or do you draw a picture and go, here's the dialogue?
It can go either way. It goes both ways. Sometimes I start with the doodle and add the words. Probably more often than not, I start with the words and add the doodles. But usually the words come first, but occasionally, sometimes the images come first, and I just got to find the right words to go with it. I think the numbers people, I think that was one where the idea came first, and I think the impetus of that was desperation. My deadline was closing in on me. I had absolutely nothing, and I don't know what I saw or made me think of it, but numbers. Okay, I could probably make a lot of puns out of that. So,
oh my gosh, I died laughing, and I'm sitting there and I'm telling my son, I have a 12 and a 14-year-old, right? And I'm telling my son today, I'm going to interview the guy who did Brewster RockIt, and he's like, how does he do it? And I'm like, I don't know if he's going to be able to tell me that. I said, because if you ask me how I do what I do, I don't know if I can tell you that.
Too much coffee, lack of sleep, a combination of the two, that helps. Deadline pressures. You put those three in a mixer together, and that's my creative juice right there.
That's one of the things we don't think about. Again, it's all the stuff that I love, the behind the scenes things in this way. We hear deadlines, but the majority of us don't understand what that means. Can you write like at 3 months of strips and then be good for 3 months? Or how does that work? Do you have to have these in? I mean, do you get ahead? Do you try to do it weekly? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be nice to be ahead, but I'm supposed to be like 4 weeks ahead. I'm pretty much like 2 minutes ahead. I push my deadlines to the absolute breaking point. Sometimes where I've even had my syndicate like, where are these strips? We're waiting on them, and I'm furiously trying to finish them up while I'm reading the email. And so, I've tried to get ahead, and sometimes I have, but it just seems like I need that impetus of a impending deadline because I don't know, I'm too much of a perfectionist. I'm never happy with what I do, and I keep wanting to like, this is not good enough. This is not good. And when the deadline comes, everything's like, yeah, this is good. whatever it is, it's just this works.
I could see that because you have really well drawn things. I mean, your faces are impeccable, and just the whole way, and your aliens and the thought process behind it. It's not like you're gonna, I'm not trying to disparage any other comics, but you can tell some people are just, I'll just throw it up there. That's not my style. I'll just throw it up there.
Mhm.
I mean, you are detailed and meticulous. And that's one of the things I sit back and which what makes the strip so good. But I've sat there and thought, man, this must take a long time.
Not too much. I mean, it does, but and so yeah, sometimes I'm kick myself for for choosing the style that I did, something that is a lot more time consuming. But I've learned a lot of shortcuts. I'm not above reusing images. Like you may notice the Are You Serious space station will look similar from one strip to another. Rather than spend a couple hours drawing that spaceship all over again. I've already got it drawn. Why So, I learned to cut some corners there, and I've simplified, sometimes I'll simplify the backgrounds to almost nothing, just try to speed things up a little bit. Well, I
I
was just drawing it for so many years. It's just almost automatic anymore.
Well, I also love how you're the only comic I've ever seen that does flashbacks. Right. So you'll use flashbacks where you'll go, oh, remember October 2011. And you'll even include the date. This is when this strip is from, and I'm like, okay, that is the only time I have ever seen it done. You just don't see that. And it's just so done. It is hard to break the fourth wall in strips,
Mhm.
but you do it without being too over about it,
Yeah.
and I'm like, wow, that's somebody who's thinking above and beyond just pie in the face.
Yeah, a lot of strips do that. A comic strip I like that's going now, Pearls Before Swine. The artist features himself in his own comic strip, but
Stephen Pastis, is that how you say that?
Stephen Pastis, yes,
Mm.
and but I can't do that for my strip. It exists in its own universe, and if I break that fourth wall, I feel like I'm destroying something. So whenever I do, start to bend that fourth wall a little bit, it's got to be subtle. Um, it can't be too overt. It's got to be, and I have to play with that very gently whenever I'm messing with the fourth wall. And as far as the flashbacks go, I just want people to know that I'm not making this up. This is this was a real strip 5 years ago that I'm calling back to. I remember I did one flashback. My style's changed immensely over the years. When I first started out, it was really, really kind of crude. And I did one flashback where they went all the way back to like the beginning when the strip started, and I used the same drawing style for the old Brewster, and and this, of course, I had the more modern, more polished style for today's Brewster. So you could see the real contrast of how much the strip had changed in that time period from that flashback.
Yeah, when you see like where they've done that on The Simpsons before, right?
Yes,
You can see
yes.
all of a sudden now you see Bart, the old Bart,
Oh,
and a
right.
Homer, and you're like, whoa!
Yeah. And the voices are different and everything.
And the way they evolved around and doing it. Well, the premise of the strip, Brewster RockIt. Are you serious? Brewster is the space captain. He is the heroic, impossibly gorgeous space captain who is a complete knucklehead, but until you find out his backstory, that he was a very competent, brave guy, but through alien abductions and some sweeps that have gone wrong, he can't remember some things like how to put on socks.
Yes, that's basically it. Uh, because I couldn't have him stupid all the time. He had, every once in a while, he's going to be required to be competent, and the way to get around that was the way you mentioned, by his brain had been Swiss cheese by too many alien abductions and memory erasures and stuff. So it's kind of spotty. He'll be lucid, 1 minute, and like you said, not can't remember how to put his socks on the next. So that gives me
Well,
a lot more. I feel that gives me a lot more flexibility to how I can use him.
Well, yeah, because he could cover so many things, and he's your version of Captain Kirk, which also, by the way, I love, is that recognizable space people appear in the thing all the time. You see Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, and you see Darth Vader,
Oh yeah,
and you see what is it, Galatu? What is it, Glatu? The day they're
the day
stood
the Earth
still.
stood still. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that was his name. Yeah, yeah. He's made a couple appearances in there. I love sneaking those appearances, those cameos by the science fiction stalwarts in the strip. Obviously, some are more recognizable than others, like you mentioned. Kirk and Spock or that sort of thing. But I like getting the real esoteric. You mentioned Guato, however you pronounce that, but also
yeah.
the robot from the old French Lang silent film Metropolis has made an appearance in there, and the aliens from This Island Earth, kind of a 1950s, another sci-fi movie. I like sticking some of the more obscure sci-fi characters in there.
Well, I love that, and I love the little things that you give reference to, and like even some of the aliens who involved in what you're doing are recognizable from some of the things. But it's like you exist. I loved it. Like, I don't know. I was reading, because I go through and read all the old ones too. And Dirk Raider, who's the villain, not Darth Vader, but Dirk Raider, and who's just as incompetent as Brewster, by the way. Uh, and he goes he has to go get his license renewed. And he's in line behind Captain Kirk and Darth and all these people. And he goes, I knew there'd be a line. And
Wow.
I'm like, that is just so clever.
Man, I'd forgotten all about that strip until you mentioned it. I mean, I
Dude.
barely remembered. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, so I barely remember some of and I barely remember doing that strip.
Because I told you, when I said I was a fan, I'm a fan, and I read all of them, and I love them, and so that's why when I reached out to you, I was like, oh, I'm so excited, because I love seeing little things. Like, I loved it when you put a TARDIS in the strip, right?
Yeah.
And because I'm you and I, if we live closer, Tim, would be better friends than you would want to be.
Yeah, that works for me. I don't have any friends, so hey, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, you'd be like this kind of thing. You'd be looking at your phone going, I'm not home, Gary. I'm busy, Gary. I'm on a deadline. I can't. Come on, Tim, let me come over. Let me just hang out for a little bit. But I love all of that stuff, because I know you're talking about, but the humor is what, again, we have to go through all the stuff. We have to make Pamela May Snap is the second in command.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how anybody doesn't develop a crush on Pam.
Yeah, I see that a lot in the comment section. People seem to really like her. And she's probably the character I'm most proud of, because she just started out as a straight man. When the strip first started, she was just a foil to Brewster. But somewhere along the way, and I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but she developed her own personality and just all these little characteristics and quirks and traits. And she's, I think, easily my most well-rounded character, probably the most believable, because she's the one that gets actually exasperated by everything that's going on.
And she likes to kill.
Yeah.
And she likes to beat and slap.
Mm-hmm.
And she has 2 children from a marriage she doesn't talk about. And she's also, here's what you need to know, she's Brewster's biggest defender.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good. A lot of people.
She was brought in to replace Brewster.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people don't know that. They wonder why she puts up with him, but she does have a soft spot for Brewster, and she does. You'll catch it every once in a while in strips. She'll actually defend him a lot of times.
Well, and they're both so impossibly beautiful, and you're like, well, how did those two? Because Pam's always looking for, listen, she's dated Dirk Raider and also Kagron, the alien who likes to eat people, who has a crush.
Carnor, right?
Carnor. So it's like, so she likes a little bit of the bad boy, but you're like, You know what the term is? We ship people, right? We relationship people. And you look at Pam, but then Pam realizes how limited Brewster is. So she's like, if you had 10 more IQ points, you and I'd be something.
Yeah.
But we're not. Because you're my third child.
True. Yeah.
Again, this is all hat for you, but you have to understand what a fan I am. And I know everybody who loves Brewster RockIt is watching this because they found it. They're like, somebody talked to Tim Rickard. I want to see it. And so I try to answer and say all the things that I know all the other millions of fans who just love this thing. You have Cliff Clueless, who got his job by hacking into the NASA thing and upgrading his education. He's the ship's engineer, worst engineer ever. You have Dr. Malpractice, the evil scientist, our sanity challenged as he prefers it, and his lab assistant, Winky. Where in the world did you come up with Winky?
Winky, the old sci-fi shows back in like 50s, early 60s, they always had like a kid aboard a spaceship, which, doesn't sound like a really good idea. Have a little kid on a spaceship.
Star Trek Next Generation, right?
Yeah, even then they had Wesley Crusher, but back there was like a Rocky Jones, sci-fi serial back in the 50s, and they had a kid on there named Bobby. And there's I think some of the other shows like Rock. Some of the other, I can't remember offhand, but some of the other ones, they always had kids on there. And I always think that's got to be like a dangerous place to have kids. So I added one. I named him Winky after one that I mentioned, Rocky Jones. There was a character on the show called Winky. He was actually like the co-pilot. And that's where the name came from. I just love that name. It seemed to fit the kid. But there was an old show, I don't know if it called Mr. Wizard. It was kind of like an old science show. Yeah, he would be like showing these science demonstrations to kids, and I always wonder, what would happen if these science experiments and stuff he's showing these kids just went horribly wrong. And that was kind of the impetus between Dr. Mel and Winky, his lab assistant.
I love the fact that there's no mortality. Winky and Ensign Kinney die all the time. All the time. And they're back the next trip. I love that. I just love, I love when you give us a world that your rules are, there are no rules, but there's rules.
Exactly.
So I'm going to kill Ensign Kinney, but I'm going to bring him back.
Yeah. And the best way to deal with that is don't deal with it. Just it never comes up. And actually, Winky should die most of his things, but he doesn't. But I needed a character I could kill off, and I didn't want to kill off a kid. So that was how I came up with Ensign Kinney. He's just kind of like a Winky that I could kill off. And like I said, when he does, he just shows up, no questions asked, and he's there again. So, and of course, the name Kenny, of course, is named after the character from South Park, the character there who they killed Kenny.
Bastards.
Yeah, the bastards. But they show up again. He shows up again in the next show. So, in homage to that, I named my character Ensign Kinney.
What's your go-to sci-fi? If you sit back and said, okay, if it's on, I will watch it. If I have time, I will watch it. I'll compare with you.
Probably still the original Star Wars. The first three, especially the first two, are probably still my. That's something I can't resist. And I like Star Trek. That's a good go-to. I don't know. I tend to be more drawn to the older stuff, I guess. Some of the older movies, older sci-fi movies, the kind of the cornier, cheesier ones.
I love all that. I mean, and I love the old Star because that's what you and I think of a certain age. And I remember when they would show all the old science fiction and horror movies on Saturday night at 10:30, right? Where I grew up. Right. Yes. And so I would stay up and watch all of those things and just loved them. I mean, and then when Star Trek came on, because I was kind of young for the original series. I mean, when it was originally on TV, right? Mm-hmm. So I was 7, 8 years old when it came on. It was hard, but the reruns introduced me, and I fell in love with and love the Star Trek. And what I've learned though is like, cause you mentioned, I love the first couple of Star Wars movies. And I'm like, yeah, I fell in love with that too. I can remember standing in line. I get the third movie, maybe not, maybe you weren't an Ewok guy. I get it. I get it. And then when they did the prequels, okay. But I have to say, this is me being controversial, not you, Tim. But the last couple of movies for Star Wars, they just ruined it for me because they changed the rules. They took everything and said, oh, by the way, Luke, Leia, Hans, they weren't special. Nah, nothing about it. Nah, they didn't care. You know, and it was like, and so it just, and it's like Doctor Who. I love Doctor Who. Well, they've changed it so much now, and I'm not angry. You have to understand. It's like, well, okay, my time with this show is over. So it's okay. It's for new people. And if they can find an audience, yay. But, they've changed the rules too much for me to be able to stay with it, which is another one of the reasons I love your strips, because I get my sci-fi back. I get to see Darth Vader. Yeah. I get to see Captain Kirk, where everything that's where there's no new ideas out there, as well as I do. But they take the old ideas and then they change them radically.
Yeah. Yeah, I lost so much interest in the newest Star Wars films. I don't think I even saw the last one, the Last Jedi or whatever that one was. I haven't even seen it yet. I guess I will get around to watching it, but yeah, they just they kind of lost me there.
Well, you should. Here's my take. I always tell people don't watch it. I mean, I'm never one of those people who actually say don't watch it. I like watch it, and then I'm going to be interested in getting your reaction, because you're like me. You have a love for it. There's a passion for it. Yeah. And then when you sit back and go, wait, what just happened here? Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I was going to say, it's not even something I've avoided watching or anything like that. It's just I've lost so much interest in the series, and that after that reboot, that it just I just never had the impetus to get around to watching it. But I will make myself watch it one of these days.
Well, and the thing about science fiction's always had this thing where they tried to make it, even, over Star Trek. I mean, they had Let This Be Your Last Battlefield. And it was the guys who, one side was black and the other side was white. And the other side, yes, one side was white and the other side was black. And they hated each other because it was a parable on the stupidity of racism. Right. And so they did always try to find a way to reflect what's going on in society now. I have no problem with that. It's just when all of a sudden now all the things that Picard did is now viewed as a war crime. Wait, what? What happened? Because, hold it. All the things. Luke was a Jedi. What happened to that? Oh, yeah. Well, he drinks blue milk now. That's all he does. He's stupid. So that's just me getting controversial. And the beautiful thing about your strip is that you don't have to address any of that. You just get to stay right there in that sweet spot. And as I told you, it gives me my comics back.
Yeah, it's great not having to solve things or wrap things up. But a lot of times I'll get done with a story arc and I won't even write a finish for it. I'll just I've said all I wanted to say about this, and I'll drop an arc, like right in the middle of something going on. I don't even finish it. I'm just like, it doesn't need a finish. This is good. And I'll go on to the next thing. And that's the beauty of it is I don't write I think a lot of times these people write themselves into corners and they, like you said, they have to start changing things, and I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to tidy everything up with a neat little bow. I can, like you said, Ensign Kenny, I can kill him off one strip and bring him back the next and not have to worry about it.
Well, and I love it because you have such and one of the things I do love, I love the little Dr. Mel Science Sunday strips every now and then, where you take real science and then you find a punchline at the end.
It's time to think differently when it comes to your parties, meetings, and groups. The catering from Havana Cuba restaurant in downtown San Jose. Instead of the same old, how about the most delicious Cuban sandwich you've ever had? You're tired of fries? Plantains, my friends, they'll change your world. And here's something you didn't know. Havana Cuba was voted one of the top 10 tamales in the entire South Bay. They have vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free options, and their website is 998cuba.com. They're located at 387 South 1st Street in downtown San Jose. It's Havana Cuba.
And I was going to ask you, what's your favorite planet? Because I have one besides Earth. You don't get to pick Earth.
Well, of course, my favorite planet is Uranus.
With Odor from Uranus.
Yeah, Odor, who's from Uranus, yes. I mean, being a cartoonist, come on.
I knew it would be because because mine is Neptune. And there's just not a lot of fun things you can do with Neptune.
No.
But as far as the planet itself, it's blue. It has 1,000-mile-an-hour winds. It's, 31 moons. I mean, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, a good place to visit, just not a good one to write about.
There's none of them. Aren't you? Because I would assume that not only that, but you have a fascination with science, I would assume. Mm-hmm. See, I do too. And you know why? I think it's because they can explain it better with all the graphics and all the animation that we have now. I think it's easier for us to understand that it was when I was 14 years old and trying to learn it in school, it was numbers on a page.
Oh yeah. I don't think I could do rocket science without all the new technology that we have, especially like YouTube and videos and stuff. Animation that really helps explain a lot of things. And like you said, I love science, but the thing is, I'm not like an expert in science, so I'm learning these things I write about in rocket science. I'm learning them right along with the reader because a lot of these things I researched and learned about as I was writing, and I just had to pick things that interest me and that I find interesting. And I was lucky enough to find a partner from Dr. Mark Raymond from JPL, who's kind of my ride shotgun with me on those rocket sciences. He's kind of my editor and fact checker and proofreader, and keeps the science correct on some of those. And he throws me some ideas about what to do from time to time. So that's been a nice partnership for about 12 years now, I guess.
I know every now and then you'll include a question from him for the crew of the Are You Serious?
That's how we started. He actually wrote me a question. It was just like one of these just really sciencey, high-tech things. And I was just like, I wonder how my crew would answer this question. So I wrote him back and asked him if he wouldn't mind guest appearing in my strip. And he was thrilled to do it. So I ran a photo of him and his question, and everybody, giving their best shot at trying to answer it, which of course nobody could.
But nobody even tried.
No. Nobody was even close. Matter of fact, to this day, I still don't understand the question. So,
and you get to put on your inner Brewster at that point. Brewster's like, "Where's the question?" or something. And Pam is like, "I'll punch you." I mean, that's and again, this is me fanboying out here. The world's most useless superheroes. They're not the Fantastic Four. They're something.
We don't know what they were. I love that. They actually went through several iterations of different heroes, but the last batch I came up with was my favorite, and that's the one that stuck. I left them there. It was Irritable Belle, which is Pam, and Short Attention Span Avenger, which is Brewster, Empathy Lad, which is Winky, and my favorite was Captain Hindsight, which is Cliff, whose superhero ability is to come in and tell you what you did wrong after the fact.
Because we all know one of those superheroes. and the funny thing of it is the people who are that superhero don't realize it.
Oh, yeah. Beauty. Yeah. No, that's the thing that gets me is just how many people will read that and see other people in it. Nobody ever says, "Oh, that's me." That's my husband or that's my wife. Yeah, but it's never me.
Yeah, I think if I was going to be one of them, I would be Empathy Lad. Because, raising my kids and stuff, they'll do something. I'm like, oh, that's not fun, huh? Oh, boy, did that hurt? That looked like it hurt.
Yeah, I am definitely short attention span avenger. I have the world's shortest attention span. I'm just you'll be lucky if I don't start wandering off during your podcast and start playing with some kind of shiny metal object over on the corner there, as I have a horribly short attention span. So I can definitely identify with Brewster on that one.
But you are so funny, and you sit back and especially in your strips, it's like, has there ever been, because you get to do stand up without having to stand up,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I don't consider the fact that I think I can write gags okay, but I don't have a fast mind. I'm the type of person who comes up with a perfect comeback, 10, 20 minutes later, which is not a good trait to have if you're a stand-up comic, So, doing a comic strip is a much better fit for someone like me.
You would be surprised. I had on a comic who I think is brilliant, and his name is Greg Warren. And he was saying, listen, because we ended up having this conversation about creating comedy, right? I thought I was just going to come on and laugh with him for an hour. But he was very thoughtful and talked about how he created comedy. And he said, it's a matter of, we're writers, and we write something and then we say it out loud. And then we figure out a better way to say it. So we rewrite it again until we say it out loud. Then he goes, I'm not one of those guys who venture. I don't leave the comfort of the joke. I do the act. I don't interact with the audience. Because once you leave the comfort of the act, now you've invited the audience in, and you don't want the audience in. He goes, some guys can do that. I think they're great, but I don't want the audience in. He goes, me, Jerry Seinfeld, we write, and this is our show, and we will do the show for you, but we don't want you to participate other than laughing. Right. So,
if I was a stand-up comic, that's the only way I would be able to work. If I started interacting with the audience, it would be over. But,
that's the thing. You write such good gags, and let's be clear, it's all about the gag. It's all about the punch, and you do that. It's something you could have done. If you could not draw as well as you can, then that's where you would have ended up at, I think.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I didn't think I was capable of writing comics. I just, when I was younger, but I loved it, and I did it anyway, just simply because I loved it. It looked like so much fun. But the more I did it, the more I kind of started getting better at it, and I was like, maybe I can do this. But if I had started out doing strips just because I loved doing them, it was just fun, I probably would have never became a syndicated cartoonist. Because I started out, I was just assumed I couldn't do it. But you once you force yourself, you'd be surprised what you can do.
What was your first job? You didn't go from, okay, I'm going to doodle in my living room to syndicated comic. That's going from the minor, not even the minor league. That's backyard baseball into the majors, yes. Right? That is rarefied air.
It is the show, as they say.
It is the show. What was your first paid gig for doing comics?
For comics, I also worked for years at a newspaper. I was a illustrator, graphic artist at a newspaper. We did editorial cartoons and stuff there, and also did gag cartoons for a magazine. It's called First for Women magazine. I don't think they run cartoons anymore, but years ago they did. It's a national magazine, and I did cartoons for them for about 3 years. And that was kind of my dry run, I guess, for having a syndicated comic strip. And the funny thing is, like I said, that was still during the time I didn't think I could write gags, but the pay was good, so I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. And it was actually. I surprised myself. I was able to do it easier than I thought. And after doing that, I was thinking, well, maybe I can do a comic strip.
Wow. And that's the first time you pitched it. Did you go through an agent and stuff like that when you pitch it to a syndicate, or is this just, hey, guys, I got this idea,
Yeah. No, it's just a straight Hail Mary. And Brewster wasn't my first attempt. I had tried other strips and unsuccessful, but I was always trying to sell a strip that I thought would sell, something that I thought would, readers would like, that hit all the popular demographics at that time or whatever. And I was never successful with them. I got a lot of rejection letters. So I thought, if I'm going to get rejected, I might as well get rejected for doing something I want to do rather than doing strips I didn't really want to do, just I thought would sell. And that's the one that they liked. That's the one they bought.
Man, can you imagine having to write Mary word? That's just me. That's just me talking, right?
Yeah,
Where you're just like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Getting turned down for those others was a blessing because I love Brewster, but writing Brewster is hard. I cannot imagine writing a strip for the 20 years I've been doing it and doing something I didn't like.
Yeah. And not having fun with it. I mean,
and not having fun with it.
And the whole like Gasoline Alley. Again, this is just me. This is just me. That I think it's a great concept. We're going to have these characters age. They're going to age. They're going to get old. They're going to, which I think is cool. But I also love the timelessness. I love the fact that James Bond is always going to be a certain age. I love the fact that, I love how Foxtrot, that the teenagers, you go through and find one of their anthologies and what were they talking about? Well, it used to be Paige was all about Justin Bieber or,
Right.
New Kids on the Block. And now she's all about Taylor Swift. So times change, but they don't. And
Right.
I feel the same. I love that. I love that device that you guys have, that we have little things go on, but Brewster's not going to age. Pam's kids aren't going to get old. And the beautiful thing is you have a time machine. So if you wanted to go explore that, you get to do it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's fun. It's amazing. Just, it doesn't seem like it's been that long to me, 20 years, but it's amazing when I've done some of those time travels, things that have changed, things that were, big and commonplace back, 2008 or so that just like don't exist anymore. I had one Brewster met his older self and I don't know, 2005 or something like that. And his 2005 self asked Brewster how his Blockbuster stock was doing. Yeah. And it's just amazing that, back then these things that were like, big and, everywhere are all of a sudden gone anymore. And just like, when my strip first started, there wasn't even smartphones.
Wow.
I mean, there were cell phones, but they weren't, the Apple smartphone hadn't come out yet.
Yeah, if you think about it, I mean, we don't realize how recent of a development cameras on a phone are.
Mm.
That we take it for granted. Like my son was asking me the other day, he goes, "Do you have any pictures from?" And I'm like, "No." And he goes, "Why?" I said, "There were no pictures. There were no cameras on my phone in 2006. 2008. No, I didn't have that wasn't an option." I mean, we were thrilled to send texts. It's not the world and that to them, that's recent. That it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just bonkers. Well, that's another thing with the time machine. Maybe at some point, I don't know if you've written this strip, that we can go and find out if Pam was always the angry young woman.
I thought about that. So far, the only backstory I've really I read a little bit of backstory for Brewster, his the memory wipes and everything he got. But the only true backstory I've done so far has been Agent X.
Yeah.
So that he's always very, very secretive and very, very, very much a conspiracy buff, even when he was a kid. And I've thought about that. I need to do that with each of the characters. Just kind of go back and do their backstory.
Yeah. Cliff Clueless, the engineer, has always been. He's always been, and again, I again, because I'm just fanboying out. I love the fact that Cliff doesn't really know how he feels about Pam. He loves Pam. He's excited by Pam. He's intrigued by Pam, but he doesn't want any of the relation. He doesn't want any of the responsibilities that would come with Pam.
Well, yeah. Well, responsibilities with anything.
Yeah. Anything. and I like that, and Pam and her bad boy tendencies, who was it, that she, somebody horrible, but he's a king. Brewster was like, what is wrong? But he's a king.
Yeah, that's fun. It's fun finding little faults with like Pam. I mean, like I said, some of the stuff her character, her personality kind of wrote itself. I did not start out with that as in mind for her, but it just seemed to fit her personality as the strip went along.
Well, she ties everything together if you think about it.
Oh
Because
yeah,
the rest of them, I mean, it's Leonard in Big Bang Theory, right?
yeah,
If you don't have Leonard holding everything together, then you have all of these crazy people who just can't figure out a way to interact. And so you have to have somebody who's like, yeah, you guys are weird, right? But
oh yeah,
I've got my own weirdness too.
yeah.
And Pam is the linchpin of the
Mhm.
thing. Is without her, everything flies off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's the only thing in the strip that's keeping it grounded. That she's kind of almost like our eyes into that world. You know, kind of. She's kind of like the reader's personality, the reader's point of view on all this craziness that's going on around her.
Craziness? Come on. There's no craziness there. Let's all load up and go to the planet of the donuts.
Yeah, desperation. I'll tell you what. That is a great muse to have is complete desperation, and that the donut people was born of that, and it's been one of my favorite creations. The donut people.
I love it. They just keep coming back. I love it. You have to understand, Dr. Mel created them when he made sentient donuts. Dr. Mel Practice, evil scientist. and all the different races that you come in to play with, and everybody has, oh, by the way, our moon had got repossessed.
Mhm.
They tried to Odor of Uranus. Did he buy the earth or something, like some kind of thing? Anyway,
I think he was the one who bought the moon.
Bought the moon.
Yeah.
And it's all of these different things. And then every one of them, you would think Brewster should lose every battle he gets into, but he doesn't. He's the guy. And everybody knows this in business. Everybody has met that person who fails up.
Yes, that is Brewster. He just kind of believes everything will turn out all right, and it manages to somehow. And yeah, like it fell forward. Absolutely.
It's the military. Remember back in the days when if you lost a war, you lost your job? That's not the way the military works anymore. So the fact that Brewster is right in there, he's an embodiment. You didn't even know you were being so prescient in your creation.
Yes.
It works out just fine. Hey, are we ever going to get another a collection? Are you going to throw out another book?
I would like to, if I ever find time to get around to it. It's we're just doing the daily strip, especially like pushing my deadlines to the last minute, just seems to eat up all my time. But because it's going to take a while I gotta organize the strips and get them in order and put them together and compile them. And so far, I just can't seem to find time to do that.
Tim, you can hire people to do that. If you need somebody, I know a guy. I can find somebody to help you put all those together. Correlate them, as they say.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is kind of look at it. What do you do for fun?
Work mostly. I don't know. That's what I do mostly. I don't know if I do it for fun. I spend time with my family. I'm married. I got 2 girls. One got married and moved off sort of last year, but her husband's in the military, so she comes home quite often and stays. But we like to play games and watch movies and go to Disney World a lot. That's kind of our thing. So spending time with the family.
Disney's fun. I mean, so
Yeah.
you get to do that, and then the board games. I would imagine that you're funny when they don't expect it, right? Because I done a radio show my entire life, and now I have this podcast, and people will go, oh, I bet, they'll tell my wife and kids, oh, I bet he's just so much fun. It's fun, and they're like, no. No. And as I always said, Tom Brady didn't come home from a game and his wife said, "Hey, why don't you throw me a pass?" I've done that,
Yeah.
but they'll tell you that, well, he'll say stuff when you don't expect him to say stuff. And that's when it's funny. Dad will never say something when you expect him to say it. And again, I feel like you and I would be friends, annoyingly so from your side standpoint. I can see you being that way. And all of a sudden you just say something nobody was kind of expecting it, but they knew, oh well, that's Tim.
Yeah. Well, we'd be friends because not everybody gets me. I'm not sure my family gets me. So anybody who gets me they would be like, all right, that's 90% of the battle right there.
I would have so much fun because I could tell you this, I would never ask you to show me the strip, right? Because I love every day just having it there. And I love the fact that you meet your deadlines. So I would never be that guy going, oh, come on, let me see what's coming up. I never want to open Christmas presents on Christmas Eve. Drives my kids crazy. I'm like, you've waited this long. Why can't we wait till Christmas morning? Because you're going to take away all the fun from Christmas morning. You open up everything on Christmas, then you have all day to play with it.
Yeah. Plus, the creative process itself, until the strip is done and gone through like several iterations and rewording and reworking, I hate for anybody to see it. I do not like my work to be seen in progress. I don't show anybody, until I get the final product, because it's, up until the final product, it's usually a mess. It's just trying to put, because we're writing, coming up with the ideas, like 20% of it, and then the other 80% is ditch digging, is making it work. You got to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do. How do I word it? How do I write it? How many panels? Who should be saying it? Who are they talking to? Is it one panel? Does it 3 panels? What's the facial expressions? All that's the ditch digging, and that's the stuff you got to do to make the strip work.
Well, that's the artistic side. I knew a very famous painter, and I would go to his house, but he had his workshop, and nobody was allowed in the workshop. You could go through his entire house, and he had all these paintings up and all this kind of stuff. Nobody went in his workshop. Same thing, same process. You're not going to see anything that I'm not ready for you to see.
Right.
And I was always like,
because I'm never happy with it until I get it done. And so I just, I'd rather, I'm very protective about just not showing, like, I usually don't get opinions or anything. Does this work or not? Because I just don't want somebody to see the unfinished work. Not till I've had the chance to, put a little polish on it.
Have they ever approached you to animate it? Because it's a perfect animation. It is. I was researching and I was hoping I'd find some stuff. Did you see the student film that they did? Did you catch that? The Brewster RockIt movie student film they did?
I did years ago. That was very flattering. That was very nice. It was surprising. And I was I don't know how I even stumbled across that, but yes, I saw that.
Live action. It's kids. So there's kids who are portraying Brewster and Pam and everybody. And I was going
to say they were reenacting actual comic strips that I had written. They were doing the dialogue from actual comic strips.
So has that ever been discussed as far as actually doing an animated series?
Back around 2010, we actually I was actually approached by a couple of producers who had done other stuff, had produced other movies, that we were interested in doing a live action animated movie out of it. And we took it to Hollywood and pitched it, and it was well received, but it's so hard an animated movie is such a huge investment in money and time that it's a very hard sell. So we weren't quite able to get it sold, but and I've been talking to other people here and there about, maybe turning into, especially now in the days of streaming and stuff, or, maybe turning into an animated series, but still in the negotiation stage with that.
Not to cause their price to grow up, but I mean, Patrick Warburton would probably be the perfect Brewster, because that's the voice I hear when I read.
So yeah, he would definitely. My only fear is he's overused now because he does, or at least for a while there, he was doing like everybody's cartoon voice.
Yeah.
And now the guy who's doing that is John Benjamin, who
Mhm.
from Bob's Burgers. He's be doing all the voices, but for that reason, Patrick Warburton would be perfect. Except I'm afraid he might be a little overused. So
And that's a very good point.
yeah, but he's definitely got the right vibe for Brewster.
But you know who else could play stupid real well because he's so smart? Chris Pratt.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah, he could do it.
Chris Pratt. If you hear his voice from his character in Parks and Recs,
Oh, Andy, yeah, I loved it. Andy was Brewster's like spirit animal.
that's what I'm saying. He would fit just in.
Yes.
And actually, there's so many talented actresses who could nail the Pam voice.
Mm.
You just
Oh,
have to have that intelligent exasperation.
exactly. Well, that's pretty much a good description. Intelligent exasperation. I remember many years ago, people were throwing out, their picks to play Brewster in a live action movie and Pam, and I think at that time it was Will Ferrell and Selma Hayek to play Brewster and Pam.
That would be good
Yeah,
because I
I'm
think
not sure
Pam's
that.
maiden name was didn't she have a Hispanic maiden name at
Yes,
some point? I remember reading
yes,
that.
yes, she did. Yeah,
See.
I try. It's my way of trying to introduce diversity without trying to write about something I don't know about, and so I was just trying to. I was trying to throw a hint in there, but I don't feel like I'm qualified to try to write from the perspective of someone who is Hispanic. So I try to throw a little diversity in there when I can, in a way that won't get me in trouble.
I never thought about Will Ferrell. That's good too.
Yeah.
He
So
may be a
that's
little.
about 10 years ago. Maybe not now, but 10 years ago, yeah, that probably would have been a good
Yeah, I
choice.
think to say for a live action, he's a little old in the tooth.
Yeah.
But Chris Pratt still falls into that.
Oh yeah, he definitely would.
That he could do that and have that, and then all of the, and then there's so many to choose from for Cliff Clueless. I mean,
Mm.
there's just a whole so many, and there's so many science fiction geeks and comedy who would line up to do it. Patton Oswalt would line up to do it.
Oh, he would be great.
Yeah,
I would make a role for him. He'd play one of the donut people or something.
well, either that or he'd be one of the observers.
Oh yeah, he would make a great observer.
Yeah, because the observers, they just watch stuff and then they kind of insinuate what's going to happen, but we can't tell you.
Yeah, if you read Marvel Comics, you probably recognize that they're based on the Watcher from Marvel Comics, who just kind of like. But they take it a little step further. As the watching Earth and what's going on Earth has kind of become their TV, and they kind of like binge watch and talk about the episodes. Who's gaining weight and who's not gaining weight.
And it's always Pam, and Pam's side's never. Again, if you've never seen the strip, go see it. Pam is beautiful, and she's never happy. She's always looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
And Brewster does have one addiction, and it's cheese balls.
Oh yeah, that was a fun strip. The company that Utz that makes the cheese balls, that strip ran in the city where they were located or something, and he sent me a big box of full of cheese balls and cheese snacks and stuff. So I was like, oh yeah, I think I may have invented the donut people the next week to see if I can get donuts.
I was to say, if I had that kind of power, I'd be doing that all the time. Look, and how many hams have you been sent?
No hams yet. Yeah, that's well. I guess maybe they don't ship well. I don't know if you want to leave a ham sitting in a box on your doorstep for several hours or so.
If you read the strip, you know. That's all I'm saying. There's certain things that are just for those of us who read the strip religiously.
That was kind of Brewster's sign off. In Star Wars, it's "May the Force be with you," and in Star Trek, it's "Live long and prosper." Star Wars, it's "May the Force be with you." Brewster's sign off is "May there be ham in your future."
I used to do a show with a guy, and we both thought the funniest two words placed together were bad clams, right? That everything we'd find a way to say the word bad clams in a sentence because there's something about the ams sound, ham, clams, that is just uniquely, weirdly funny to a certain mindset. And so that's my thing. If you could figure out a way to throw a bad clam in there,
Oh,
good
I would
luck.
do that. But you're right. Some words are just funnier than others. Just like somebody asked Charles Schultz once, why did Schroeder have such an obsession with Beethoven? Why not like Bach or Mozart? And he said, the word Beethoven was funnier. And some words are like bad clams. They are funny. And just every once in a while I'll stumble across a word that just like works perfect in a situation. It's just absurd and funny, and it seems to work, and it sometimes they make a gag work or not work if you just pick the right word.
Well, if you ever mentions Pam's ex-husband, make sure his first name is Gary. That's all I ask. So,
Right. All right. I will. Yeah, I will do that because he has not gotten a name yet.
yeah, and I don't know. She can hate me and punch me anytime she wants, and I'll be happy to go, I spleen. I mean, I'll be happy to do that. Tim, as you can tell, I only asked for an hour of your time. As you can tell, I'm just a fan. And the fact that you explain the comic strip industry to me and to everyone else and to all the people who love Brewster RockIt who have found this because they're going to go, hold it, somebody actually talk to Tim Rickard? I get it. I hope I tried to get most of the questions, but if you have more, let me know. And then I will beg Tim to come back on at a future date and we'll try to answer your questions, but we'll go from there. You, sir, make my day better. And I thank you for it.
Well, thank you. And for anybody who's not familiar with Brewster RockIt, just go to gocomics.com, and Brewster is listed among the comics there. So you can, and also brewsterrockit.com.
That's all in the show notes. We'll find them right there.
All right.
So Tim, you're the best.
Well, thanks. This was fun.